TM has gone on a beautiful, sensational space adventure. Your session's canceled. Hopefully it's a little more Star Wars and a little less Warhammer in terms of that space adventure. But, beggars can't be choosers, I suppose. Can you imagine? You get on a spaceship of some description, doesn't matter, just a spaceship, and they're like, here's the deal. You're going on a trip, and you're going to land on a place, but we're not going to tell you where. And, like, your options are, like, beautiful, what the hell's the planet called in Avatar? Pandora? Yep. Or, like, Tyranid Hive planet. Like, those are the potentials.
You know what's funny, too, is Pandora sucks as well, because you can't breathe the fucking air.
Well, presumably, if you're going on a trip of some kind, they have that problem solved.
Yeah, that still presents a danger, though.
I mean, yes, but presumably in the far future where you're going on space cruises, they would have that solution figured out, I would hope.
I mean, look, pretty much anywhere is better than, like, in the path of a fucking Tyranid Hive fleet. Like,
exactly.
I'll go to a fucking, oh god, what do they call them? 40K.
Sahara Desert's probably better.
Yeah. I'll go to a fucking death world before I go to a tier, like, in the path of a Tyranid Hive, because at least I know on a death world, shit's fucked. Shit is unbelievably fucked. That's why it's a death world, but you're still not as fucked as you could be if you were in front of a Tyranid Hive fleet.
Yeah, it could still be worse. Exactly.
You know that there's a death world in 40K that's like a Jurassic Park style, like, ranger park, because the planetary governor bought a bunch of, like, the galaxy's most dangerous animals and set them up in a zoo, and then the animals got out and are now crossbreeding to make even more dangerous animals.
I didn't know that, but that sounds like some stupid nonsense someone would come up for 40K, so yeah.
Love it.
Some rich guy stuck ancient saber-toothed dragons onto a planet, and then they fucked and made saber-toothed laser-breathing dragons or some shit. Yeah, sure. Makes about as much sense as any other nonsense in 40K.
Truth. That's true.
Right? Yeah. So, as the title will likely tell you, we're talking about another different game that is not D&D today, although has a lot of ties to D&D, but is not D&D. Stars Without Number, which is a game I've talked about a bunch of times because it is a game I have played before, and for context, is a game I like a lot. So, you know, I have mostly glowing praise for it. So if you're expecting me to be like, look at this dumb shit, no, that will not be the case. I don't know why you would expect that, but if you were expecting that,
I don't think we've got a single game that we, like, reviewed just to shit on.
No, but maybe we should go looking for bad RPGs just for that, just for funsies.
That would be funny.
It would be. But this is not one of those games. Before we get into the mayhem, if you'd be so kind as to follow or subscribe on your current podcast platform of choice, that'd be nice. And then you can give us the numbers and we can do more of the reviews, and maybe you hear about a game you haven't heard about, because not a lot of people have heard about Stars Without Number, for example.
Yeah, you know what's funny? Even after you talk about it, like, I really don't hear about it from anywhere else on the internet.
No, it's a pretty niche game. It's one of those games that has enough of a like hardcore following that, you know, the author has been able to do 4 Kickstarters for 4 different games. So, like, clearly there's, you know, the money is being put into it, but it doesn't have like a super wide appeal. And honestly, I just think that's just because internet and saturation, because I think if it was a game that, like, if Critical Role played Stars Without Number or Worlds Without Number, I think a lot of people would be like, this sounds pretty sick, and I think it would get traction. It just hasn't had that kind of, you know, it hasn't had that big break as you would. I can't talk, Jesus. Yeah, so, and speaking of, if anyone's curious, because I just said another game with a similar name, the Without Number games are essentially, it's like it's a family of games that the creator Kevin Crawford has come up with. I don't know if this was the original objective, I'm going to be honest, but Stars Without Number is the first one that he made. And then it picked up enough steam that, and he sold enough on his website and stuff that people are like, hey, all right. And so he has made other stuff. He made another game called Godbound, for example. And the games, the family of Without Number games have now become essentially they're all kind of the same game in that the core design is there and it is the same between all of them, but they all have their own unique bits to them, and then they are meant to be modular between each other, so you can take anything from Stars Without Number and slap it into Worlds, or from Worlds into Stars, or from Cities into World. Like, you could slap it into any of them. The 4 that exist, well, there's technically 3 are out, 1 more is on the way. Stars Without Number is the sci-fi game, Worlds Without Number is the fantasy game, Cities Without Number is the cyberpunk game, and then Ashes Without Number, which is the one that's on the way, is the post-apocalypse game. Yeah, and they all follow this. They all follow this similar design, so you can use them interchangeably with each other. Is the idea? Again, I don't know if he intended to do this or not, but this is what it's turned into.
I really love the idea of you playing a Ashes Without Number campaign, and then it actually expands into a Stars Without Number campaign because you were on a death world.
That would be crazy, but totally doable. Yes.
That sounds fun as fuck. I'm not gonna lie.
Actually, that wouldn't even be very hard.
I didn't think so. Yeah, based on what you've said.
No, that would work quite seamlessly. Yeah, because you would just use the same characters and then you'd bust out the ship rules and stuff, and boom, bang, boom.
Yeah.
Specifically, we are talking about the revised version of Stars Without Number, because there is an original version of Stars Without Number, and you might say, Josh, isn't that just a second edition? Kinda, but like not really. I do think revised is the correct word here, because the original Stars Without Number, in my opinion, was a game that was solid, but didn't quite have all the kinks worked out, and so felt a little rough around the edges to play, but there was a lot of good core ideas in there. So revised was essentially Kevin Crawford going, okay, let me take these core ideas, tighten things down a little bit, and make the game that I kind of either intended or wanted to make. I don't know which, but one of those two, I assume. And so revised Stars is the child of that, like, that re-looking at it. So it really is more like a revision of the original game, because it does still at its core feel like the original game. It's not so much a second edition, because it doesn't like, revised wasn't trying to do new things, it was just trying to make the existing thing better.
Right.
That makes sense?
Yeah.
So we're specifically talking about the revised version of Stars Without Number because, quite frankly, again, this is mostly my opinion, maybe some people disagree, I don't know. The revised version of Stars Without Number makes the original version irrelevant. Like, it just doesn't, there's just no reason to play it anymore.
Right.
So, yeah.
Especially because, so, especially if you're talking about like revised, the idea is that it's improved on the other thing while still being the same thing. Right?
Yes. But some people might feel like, oh, but I like this design in the older one or whatever. I don't know. But personally, I didn't feel that way. I think, and also the fact that the subsequent Without Number games are, based on the revised system, that makes it even more of a, like, why would you play the old one?
Yeah.
Because then you would lose some of that modularity. And in fact, the revised Stars does address, if you want to use some of the older bits from the original game, it does give you a little bit of advice on like how to go about that. Nothing super in depth, but if you want to. So what the hell is this game? Well, now I'm doing that while I was yapping, explaining. So, Stars. Easy. I know. Crazy. Talking for a living or something. Living. We don't make money.
Yeah.
Stars Without Number is a sandbox OSR sci-fi space game. I assume I don't need to describe sci-fi space game, so I'm not going to. But what the fuck does sandbox and OSR mean? Sandbox game is essentially the tabletop equivalent of open world, right? Like, the idea is that the GM makes a big, large map for the player that the players can see, or at least see, bits and pieces of it, if not all of it. There might be a fog of war or whatever. And the players can travel around said big map. And the point of a sandbox game is that the GM does not have a singular narrative there's no singular story they're trying to tell. There's lots of little stories all over the map, and the story of the game ends up being whatever the players get interested in and whatever threads or breadcrumbs the players decide to follow. That is a sandbox style RPG. Kevin Crawford is of the opinion that most games, and I kind of agree with him, don't do the sandbox thing very well, in that they will tell you that they are a sandbox game and then not give you a lot of tools to make the sandbox. So the thing that's really cool about Stars, just in general, is that most games, and I forget where I read this or heard him say this, but I'm paraphrasing roughly what Kevin Crawford says. Most games have more of a focus on the player side of the game itself, because there's 4 players and 1 GM, right? So you focus your energy more towards the side of the game where there are more people interacting with it. But Kevin Crawford was like, I, as a GM, am annoyed by this. I would like a game that helps me out a little bit more. So Stars is built very much from the ground up to be super, super GM centric and help the GM in every physical way that it possibly can. And in fact, without all of the good GM resources that are in the game by itself would almost end up being quite stale, because the idea is that the base system is good and straightforward and does what you need it to do, but then you as the GM make it your own for your campaign. And if you just if you run the game 100% as is, it might feel a little stale. Like if you just go 100% by the words on the paper, because that's not the intention. The intention is you run it a little bit as is, and then as you run into scenarios where you need something to work for your campaign, you start slapping that shit in there.
I really like the idea that the GM has specifically said you're supposed to riff on this. Like, we're giving you foundational work. This is not a textbook. This is not something you follow and take notes on. This is something you understand and then collate and then begin to riff on and adapt.
Yes, and that's not me saying the core systems are bad, because they are still pretty solid, but they will run their course a little faster than something like a 5e. They will kind of stale out a little bit more because they're fairly simple and straightforward on purpose.
Right.
And the what am I trying to say? There's a bunch of little systems throughout the game that there's a lot of systems in the game that you will not end up using in a singular campaign because it's intended for a sandbox style. So there's stuff that you just may never interact with. So the idea is like, there's lots of little things. You interact with the pieces of the game that you give a shit about for your particular campaign. And then once you want to start to add complexity or add bits and bobs, you just worry about the bits and bobs that you're actually playing with. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All that being said, what the fuck does OSR mean? Because I'm sure I said that and confused at least some people. Do you know what this was?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Do.
You do now?
Yes.
Because I feel like I remember talking about this with you and you didn't at one point.
No, yes. We talked about it, and then I knew, because you had said this before, that it's like, oh, it's an old OSR style game. I looked up what OSR was, and they do actually talk about it at the beginning of the book.
They do a little bit at the beginning of the book, yes. So OSR games are kind of like a weird subculture that popped out of RPGs kind of around when 5th edition, I think, started to be a thing. I think. I'm not 100% on the timeline, to be honest, because I was not in the trenches at that time like I am now, so not 100%. But anyway, the idea is that it's this sort of subgenre style of game that's harkening back to the early days of like 2E basic is kind of the like golden it's like the target, if you will. The book references, like the Stars Without Number references, like I think Lamentations of the Flame Princess or something like that. Like it references some older adventures.
He said,
and
I just heard the Lamentation of the Women.
Of the women. Have you never heard that adventure, Lamentations of the Flame Princess?
No.
It's a very old adventure.
God damn it.
And he specifically calls out like Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson and stuff like that. So yeah, and Zeb Cook and Tom Moldvay. Tom Moldvay is kind of the important one because 2E basic is often called Moldvay D&D is how a lot of people refer to 2E basic specifically. So,
oh wow,
he was like the lead designer, I guess, on it or something like that. I forget exactly, but okay. Yeah, Tom Moldvay D&D. But as Kevin Crawford puts it in the book, this whole idea is that the old school rules creates a kind of lingua franca that everyone can sort of kind of understand, but doesn't necessarily have like a singular definition. But the basic idea is that mechanics are open-ended, not hyper-specific. Things are up to the table and GM interpretation for when they apply and how to use them. And there's also an emphasis on modularity with a lot of OSR games. So like in a very broad sense, emphasis on broad here, because of course this is hard to do, but the idea is that OSR games are modular between each other. So like, what's that game? Morkborg is another game people talk about as an OSR style game quite a bit. And the idea is that like you could take stuff from Morkborg and slap it into Stars Without Number, adjust a little, and it will mostly work because the design ethos is supposed to be similar enough that you can easily cudgel them together. Obviously, that only holds true to a point because different designers, different games, different understandings of what old school means and stuff, shit like that.
Yeah.
But OSR means old school Renaissance. I don't know if I said that part specifically, but yeah, it means old school Renaissance. Renaissance being a rebirth. I'm trying to think of like another OSR example. I guess you could kind of say Shadow Dark more recently is sort of an OSR game, but it's also sort of not because that game's sort of harkening to 5th edition as an OSR in a weird way, which is like they put a subgenre on the subgenre.
Yeah, which like it kind of straight up isn't.
It's a weird thing. But so speaking of 5th edition though, 5th edition, and again, I don't remember where I heard this, unfortunately, so my source might be that I made it the fuck up, but I don't think it is.
Okay.
5th edition, I've heard, was actually kind of intended to be an OSR game itself, in that the 5e designers wanted to kind of call back to the simpler days of 2e, where the rules had a little bit of more of this open-endedness to them. Like, that was actually an intention of 5e. I don't actually think 5e succeeded on that, but
no, I would say it definitely did not.
But what I mean by that, I don't mean that in a negative way. What I mean is that 5e, in doing that, I think the designers unintentionally created their own new version of what like an OSR thing. Like they were trying to go back to OSR, but they didn't quite do it, but they did it a little bit. But by slapping the new things on the old thing, they created this like new love child thingy. And so I think I have a theory, and I don't know, quote me on this in like fucking 10 years or something. I wouldn't be surprised if we have a 5e OSR or a 5SR. I don't know what we'll call it, but like,
look, we're struggling enough to figure out what the fuck we're gonna name whatever we have right now.
Right, exactly. But what I mean is, like, I wouldn't be surprised if a little bit down the road, when 5th edition's gone and we're on to 6e, as much as the designers seem to think that's not going to happen. Anyway,
as much as that is absolutely fucking cap.
Yeah, as much as that's cap. I think what's going to happen is we'll have kind of a 5e Renaissance, and then what's going to happen is we're going to have games that harken to the 5e style of like, this is a 5SR game, and then this is an OSR game, and like, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
I have a feeling that's going to happen. I don't know that for a fact, but I wouldn't be surprised. In a way, it kind of already happens because we have so many 5e based games. But I think what's going to happen is it's going to like recreate itself in the future where they're not specifically using 5e per se, but they're like hearkening to 5e. Anyway, there's a whole philosophy. I think there's a train of thought you could go down there. Just to address though, also, and then we'll actually get to the game itself. I mentioned that part of the idea of OSR is to be open-ended. And now you may be sitting there and think to yourself, but Josh, is not 5e very focused on the whole idea of open-ended design? And I would say yes, but differently. I think the 5e open-ended versus the Stars Without Number OSR style open-ended are not quite the same. And what I mean by that is 5e designs the game in such a fashion that the game gives you very, very specific rules and keywords and things to reference when the game gives a shit about what's going on, and then leaves it up to you when you have moved past where the rules care anymore. Stars Without Number, on the other hand, the rules themselves are designed to be more open-ended and up to interpretation within the actual, within the text. And thus, it's more up to GMs and players how things should be handled with any given rules interaction. So to give an example, 5e, you have feats, right? And feats will have very specific prerequisites, right? It'll say you have to have a specific set stat like strength 13, or you have to be a ranger to take this feat, or you have to take this feat before you can take this feat, right? There's specific prerequisites and rules on if you can take a feat or not.
Yeah.
Stars Without Number, in the warrior class, it specifically says you can take a foci, but it has to be a combat-related foci. The foci are basically feats in Stars. But the foci themselves are not labeled in any way as combat or non-combat. It's up to the GM and the player, it's a discussion whether the foci they want to take is a combat foci or not. Right? The game says you have to take a combat specific focus, but doesn't tell you what those are. It's up to you as the player and the GM to have the little back and forth about it. Okay. So for example,
I'm happy we brought this up because this did confuse the fuck out of me. And I know that they said it, like I read the rules. It's like, oh yeah, it's up to your GM to really but
yes,
you can understand that upon reading it, you're like, what the fuck does that mean, Kobe Bryant? Like,
yeah, it means it means that this is what I'm saying, where the open-endedness is built into the text itself, right? Like, the game wants you to just go with the flow. Here's what I want you to do. You logically work it out as a human being. That is up to you. So for example, a warrior player might say, can I take the hench keeper foci, which is basically a focus that lets you gain followers, henchmen, minions, that kind of thing.
Goons, if you will.
Goons. The GM might be like, I don't know, gaining followers isn't really a combat thing. And then the player might counter argument like, well, but like, what if my guy's an ex-military leader and I'm gonna specifically grab my goons are like other military personnel that I want to use to help me fight. And the GM and the player could have that back and forth and decide whether that makes sense or not. And you would probably end up basing your answer on the backstory of the character, whether that makes sense or not. The character who was a lone wanderer out in the woods becomes a warrior and then wants to take the henchkeeper focus. Maybe, probably not. But the guy who used to work in the military and takes the henchkeeper focus because he has like practice leading troops, I could maybe see that argument. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Another example is backgrounds. So in 5e, your character's background, if your character's background is relevant to a given situation, there isn't really any specific rules on how that background might affect like a skill check, for example. So like if the player character's background is they were like a blacksmith of some kind, and they're like, oh, I'm going to show all these peasants, the undead armies are coming. I'm going to show all these peasants how to make swords so we can like get a production line going. The GM's like, okay, in 5e, the GM has to go, okay, well, I mean, like maybe a persuasion roll, or maybe it's just a flat D20, or like maybe I'll have you do some saves, or so, there's a bunch, or maybe I'll have you do a couple of rolls, but the game doesn't tell you anything specific on how you should handle that situation because you've moved past the rules. The game doesn't care about that scenario. And I don't necessarily think the game should care about that scenario either. In Stars, there isn't necessarily a specific rule for background interactions in that way, but Stars Without Number has the work skill, and the work skill specifically exists when no other skill would apply, and your background might be relevant to the situation. So the character whose background was a blacksmith, none of the other skills might make sense because, well, it could be administrate, but I'm only doing that a little bit, and it could be exert, but I'm going to help them and they're helping me, so I'm not the only one exerting myself. And it could be, fix, but I'm not necessarily fixing a thing. So the GM says use work because the work skill kind of covers all of this broadly. That's another example of that kind of open-endedness, right? The work skill is not for anything in particular, but if it makes sense to use it and it's relevant to the background, you slap it in there. Questions, comments, concerns?
Nope. No, actually, comments. I do like, so this game does what I like about the equipment in Daggerheart, or not Daggerheart, in Star Wars with its skills. Because it says, well, it does X, Y, and Z, but it could, in theory, do this.
Yes.
And then it goes, okay, well then if you're looking for what that would actually be, it would be this, because this does X, Y, and Z. But it could also do this. Like, it does the thing that D&D says, which is like, well, technically, you could, in theory, use Intimidate to, like, break a door or whatever.
But, yeah, it doesn't really give you any guidance on.
Yeah, but doesn't actually give you any guidance on it, where this literally is like, well, it doesn't usually, but it could.
It could if you want it to, but it might be harder or whatever.
Yeah. And again, this goes back to what I say all the time about, like, codify these things, give us examples of it, or don't put them in the game, because you're telling people, do it, and then they go, how? And then you go,
Right. And that's what I kind of mean about 5e. Once you move past where the game cares about the specific rules, it leaves you very up in the air. And just to be clear, because I know normally LOL Josh shits on 5e. I'm not actually shitting on 5e in this situation. I'm just describing how they're different. I'm not saying that one is empirically better than the other. It's just two different methods.
Right.
I will say I personally prefer the way that Stars does it, but I'm not going to say it's empirically better. Okay. So what the fuck, how does this game work? So because it's an OSR game and it's based on old school D&D, there's a lot of D&D isms. So you have your attributes are strength, dex, con, intelligence, wisdom, charisma. They work exactly as you would expect them to.
Yep.
You have an attribute score that goes from 3 at the lowest, 18 at the highest, and it gives you a modifier. Your modifiers go from -2 to +2. All very standard D&D old school shit. Also, when you make a character in this game, if you roll your attributes, you have to go in order. So strength, dex, con, int, wisdom, charisma. You have to go in that order when you roll your attributes.
I have thoughts.
And then pause. Let me finish, and then you can say your thoughts. And then once you have done so, you may take one of those attributes and make them a 14. Make it a 14, and a 14 gives you a +1. And a +1 is relevant in this game because you don't roll a d20 in this game for checks. You roll 2d6. So a +1 and a +2 modifier are way more influential. So yeah, you roll in order, and then you take one of your attributes and make it 14. If you don't want to roll, you can take the assigned stat array, which is 14, 12, 11, 10, 9, 7, which effectively means you will have one -1 stat. All your other ones will be 0 or +1. So if you take the stat array, it's more reliable, but if you roll, you could get better results. Risk it for the biscuit, basically.
Yeah.
Thoughts? or thing you were going to say?
Yeah. So I think the idea of like, you know, what you roll is what you get. That's fair. But the like, oh, I want to play a sniper, and then you roll really bad for your dexterity. And you're like, well, can I just assign this to something else? And obviously, like the GM can be like, yeah, sure, that's fine. Like,
well, if you know you want to play a sniper, take that 14, apply it to your dex. That's the first. That would be the first thing. And this is the important one. The attribute. So it's not every 2 points like 5th edition, right? So to have like a -1, to have a -2 is very unlikely because you need to roll 3 1s on your 3d6s. So very unlikely. Next thing up, a 4 to a 7 gets you a -1. A -1 is really easy to overcome. And honestly, the attributes in this game are generally not as important as your skills are. Your skills and your foci will overcome most of your attribute shortcomings. So you might be down a point if you didn't roll as well, but you will still be generally effective. And what ends up happening is after you play for a little while, because you can also upgrade your attribute scores, it becomes irrelevant. Like I could tell you from play, it becomes irrelevant if you have like a bad attribute. It does hinder you a little bit, obviously, but so much less than in something like 5e because the negative is less. The range of likeliness of rolling bad is less because the way the attribute breaks down because obviously no one can see the table. If you roll a 3, you have a -2 modifier. If you roll a 4 to a 7, you have a -1. If you roll an 8 to a 13, that's 0. So that's a pretty wide range. 14 to 17 is +1, and then 18 is +2. So your character is going to have, most likely, -1, 0, or +1. Unlikely you will have a +2 or a -2. Not impossible, but unlikely. And again, because you can pretty easily overcome the problem with skills, it kind of stops being a big deal. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And if you are really worried about it, you take the stat array and you'll be fine. Because the stat array, you can assign in any order. They don't have to go in order or in any specific order.
Yes.
Then you have skills. So skills range from level 0 to level 4. When you make a skill check in this game, you roll 2d6, you add your attribute, and you add your skill. So if you're making and the attributes and skills are not tied together the way they are in 5e, it depends. The GM will tell you, I need you to make a attribute skill. Like, so they'll say, make a strength exert. If you're trying to like run cross country, the GM might say, make me a strength exert roll, because exert is a skill. So you would roll, let's say your strength is 0 and your exert skill is 2. You'd roll 2d6 plus 2, 0 for the attribute, 2 for the skill. Boom, bang, boom. DCs are decided by the GM as normal, as you would expect. And the GM can assign +2s and -2s to their discretion. The game recommends don't go much beyond a +2 or a -2 because, again, as I said, you're rolling 2d6. So stat curve wise, a +2 or a -2 are a big influence on the roll. So if you give a player like a +3, you're almost guaranteeing they're going to do the thing. Like, you're giving them a huge swing if you give a player a +3 or a +4, which every once in a while does come up. +4 is a like huge, like crazy big bonus. +4 is like double advantage in a 5e situation almost.
Yeah, I mean, if it seems like the highest the modifier goes is 14.
What?
Well, so they give, so not that it only goes that high, but the table, like the difficulty table, because they give you a table that describes difficulty. I don't believe it goes past 14.
The DCs.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. 14 is like the upper end of a DC. You can go past it. The game does not recommend it.
Yeah. It's the 5e thing, right? Where it's like, you can go beyond DC 30, but there is no real reason to.
There's kind of no point.
Yeah. Like doing so is just sort of disruptive and doesn't really solve anything. If that's the case, just don't let them do it.
As for the skills themselves, really quickly, The skills are all verbs in this game. They're all action verbs. So you have administer, connect, exert, fix, heal, know, lead, pilot, program, punch, shoot, sneak, stab, survive, talk, trade, and work. I just like that stab is a skill. That's always amused me.
It is
still amuses me. Yeah.
It's like Lancer with a apply fist to face.
Yeah. And they all kind of do what the word sounds like. So administer is for managing organization, handling paperwork, analyzing records. You're administrating. Connect is for finding and connecting with people. Exert is for physical exertion, running, speed, strength, stamina, that kind of crap. They all do as they sound. With that one example being the work one that I mentioned before, where work is not for anything in particular, but it relates to whatever your character's profession might have been before they were a space adventurer. And then the game briefly mentions the psychic skills right here, which I will just mention. You have biopsionics, which is body augmentation and healing. Metapsionics, which is nullifying, boosting, or manipulating other psychics. Precognition, which is seeing the future. Telekinesis, which is it's telefucking kinesis. Telepathy, it's telepathy. Teleportation, it's teleportation. Those are your psychic abilities. Yeah. The first three are a little or the first two are maybe a little unclear, but precog, telekinesis, telepathy, teleportation, pretty obvious. Then you get backgrounds. The book starts with character creation, by the way, so this is all character creation stuff. So backgrounds are your character's backgrounds. It works as expected.
Why are they doing
you pick
what
a
they
background.
doing? How are they doing what they doing?
What was your character before they were adventurer? What the background does in this game, it does basically two main things. It gives you a couple of skills. You get one free skill from every background. So Barbarian, for example, starts with their what the free skill is survive. So it starts at survive 0. Because if you're not trained in a skill, it starts at -1. So if you're trained, you go from -1 to 0. You don't go from 0 to 1. And then you have a growth table and a learning table. And you have, again, with the backgrounds, like with your attributes, you have a choice. You can either go with the, you can select, two or three? Oh yeah. You can either select 2 skills from the learning table. There's a learning and a growth table. You can either select 2 skills from the learning table, or you can roll 3 times, split between the growth and the learning table, however you want to split it up. The benefit of this is if you roll, you will get better skills. You will get better stats or skills. For example, the growth table has stat increases on it, whereas the learning table doesn't. So if you roll randomly, you could potentially up your attributes. The trade-off being you don't have control over it, so you might not roll for exactly what you want. You can also potentially roll the any skill option, which shows up on pretty much all of the backgrounds, and any skill means you can pick whatever the hell you want, which is, a nice little extra bump. So you're trading the randomness for your character will be a bit better, but you don't have as much control over it. Or you can just take the 3 quick skills the game recommends, and those you start with those. Nice and simple. No choices. No choices required.
I've noticed that there's a lot of that in this game. It's like, okay, this is what you do. This is how you make the choices. But if you don't want to make those, I got you.
Yes,
they literally did
a
that
lot
for
of
creative characters. Like, do you not want to make decisions? Do you want to no think?
Here you go, bud.
I got it.
Yeah. This is very true. The other thing that your background does, other than your skills and those boosts, those rolls I was just talking about, is your background is your GM is supposed to consider your background when skill checks come up, basically. So if your background was that you were a technician at a starport and you're going to examine a ship, a standard run-of-the-mill ship for a company that everybody uses, you're checking out a Walmart or an Amazon truck, basically. And you go, well, GM, I was a technician. Can I get a bonus here? I've looked at a million of these fucking things. The GM could say, yeah, you could get a bonus. Or you might say, no, but you're the only person that can make this check because nobody else would know how to look at this thing if they haven't done it before. So the idea is that you're supposed to the GM is supposed to take your background into account, and or you as the player are supposed to mention it if you think it might be important. So those are the two things your background does. Then we get to your class choice. Classes. This game uses the word classes. It's
They're
almost sort of
really.
It's almost a classless system.
Yeah.
It's kind of it's a little bit of a fabulous situation where they're like, we use the word classes, but it's not really a class system. And in fact, Cities Without Number and Ashes Without Number are completely classless systems. So down the road, he just went totally classless. Anyway. So in this game, you have your 3 classes are Warrior, Expert, there's technically 4 classes. You have Expert, Psychic, and Warrior. Or you could take the Adventurer class, and the Adventurer class lets you pick 2 of the other 2. So you can be a partial Warrior, partial Psychic, or partial Expert, partial Warrior. In the campaign I ran, I had a partial Warrior, partial Psychic, who was basically a Metal Gear Solid Raiden type character, child soldier, but with psychic powers and a cool psychic sword.
I don't like that. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. Basically picking the class, it used to actually, in the old version of Stars, it determined more than in this version of Stars. So that's what I mean where I kind of say it's sort of a classless situation. It basically, it gives you a couple of skills and it determines your HP and your to hit bonus. So the way you end up building a character is that you're in something like 5e where your class is the biggest decision about your character. In Stars, your background, your skills, your focuses, and your class all kind of are equally important to how your character turns out. So your class is a quarter of your choices, and the other 3 make up the other parts. So like, for example, if you take Expert, experts have an ability to, once per scene, they can reroll a failed skill check. Warriors have an ability where once per scene or once per once per scene they can auto hit or auto dodge a hit. The warriors also gain a couple of extra XP, couple extra HP at level 1 and when they level up. And warriors get a free combat focus, and experts get a free non-combat focus. Psychics get psychic powers. That covers their whole thing because psychic powers.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the partials, you get a little bit. So if you take a partial warrior, you get the combat focus, you get the bonus to your attack, you get the +1 to your attack bonus. You gain the extra hit points. You don't get the auto hit ability. If you take a partial expert, you don't get the auto reroll ability, but you do get the extra skill points that experts normally get. That's when experts level up, they get extra skill points to spend on skills. So that's kind of the vibe. You can mix and match them or go down one. But like I said, the class is sort of it's a small portion of your overall character. It's not like a 5e situation where if you play Paladin, you're going to be doing a specific thing. You do Paladin shit. You can pick a warrior and still do stuff that feels a little different to the next. Like you could have 2 players who are warriors and not feel exactly the same. In fact, I basically had that because I had a player who was a partial warrior and a full warrior. Or no, sorry. I had a player who was a partial psychic and a full psychic, and they did not feel exactly the same. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a class system, but not really. And in fact, the partial mix and match system gets expanded upon in Worlds Without Number, where he added a bunch of classes that are only partial classes, so you have to take them with one of the other core 3. So that's kind of fun. I don't know, questions, comments, concerns, Isaiah?
No, I mean, I agree. Yeah, I even reading it, I was like, these seem like they sort of seem, what's the word I'm looking for? They sort of act as class foundations that are bolstered by your background, your focus. Like, they're sort of like the most basic framework for what a class is. Expert, you're roguish. You know, you got a lot of skills. You're really good at doing like field abilities. You know, and you have abilities.
You have more skills. You get a reroll.
Yeah, you're very utilitarian. Warriors are you hit hard, and you're good at taking hits. Psychics, like you would expect, are whatever the fuck those two goobers don't cover. You got it.
Yeah. And it is worth pointing out too. This game is very much not like D&D in that, or it's not like modern D&D. It's more like older school D&D where you can have. So like in my campaign, Sam played a pure expert. He was not a combat character. He was dog shit in combat. He had very little HP. He could do very little damage. His shoot skill was not very high, so he would miss quite a bit. Like, he was not good at fighting. He had piloting, he had fix, he had a lot of other shit. He was very useful, but in a fight, he was garbage. So this is a game where your character can be genuinely bad in a fight. It's not a 5e situation where, oh, I'm gonna play a healer cleric, so I'm not gonna be, like a healer cleric is still good in combat in 5e. That is not the case in Stars. You can have a very not combat character. And combat is a lot more deadly in this game, also, just like across the board.
Oh God, what was Sam's character? Isn't this the dwarf dude? The shotgun?
No. That was Shadowrun.
What was the name of that character?
The dwarf?
Yeah. It always made me laugh.
What was the name of that character? I don't remember. That's a great question. That's a good question. I think it was another name with an L, but I don't remember. Yeah, wow, I don't remember. I'm also forgetting. I think his Star's character was Lynn, I think was his name. I don't remember.
Lynn was his Star Wars character.
Oh, Star Wars. So what was his Stars Without Numbers character's name? Fuck. Leo, maybe? Might have been Leo, actually. He's had several L name characters.
Most of his characters have an L name.
Yes, not on purpose. He just kind of did it that way. All right. Then we get to foci. Foci are basically feats, but they are way more integral to this game than, well, with 5e24, feats have become more integral to the game. But foci from the jump were very integral to your character in Stars. They dictate quite a lot about like how you will play your character. And you get more of them, and it's not like 5e where you have to choose either up your stats or take a feat. Everyone gets foci at certain levels. I'm now blanking on which levels. It's like 2, 5, 7, 10 or something like that, I want to say. Something along those lines. I forget. But point is, everyone gets foci. They are like they're built in that sense. And they have a lot of influence over how you're going to play the character. Because if you take the close combat focus, you're going to want to be up in people's shit as much as humanly possible because you get lots of benefits for doing so. For example. And then there are also origin foci. And origin foci is basically how this game covers playing a not human. Because the game assumes that the game basically assumes everyone's playing a human. If you don't want to play a human, if you want to play an alien or a robot or a sentient AI, which is an option in the deluxe rules, which we won't be getting to today, but that is a thing. Origin foci cover that. So like I had a player who my psychic character in my campaign was an alien So he started with I think he took the unique gift foci, I want to say, or something like, I forget exactly which one, but he took a foci that made him an alien. So that was his like starting focus. The idea is that it kind of cuts your character off from other, you can't take one of the other more mechanical focuses, foci, whatever. But you get to be an alien. There's a decent list. Oh, also pretty much almost every focus has a level 1 and a level 2. So you can double dip into them to get an upgraded version of the one that you already have.
Right. So actually, I had a question about this.
Yeah.
So it says you can't take a level in something more than once. Does that mean, or what he's saying, you can't take the level 1 perk twice. You have to take the level 1 and then the level 2 perk.
Yeah, you can't take the level 1 perk
Twice.
Yes. So you can't say, I want to double up on the level 1 effect. If you take the foci again, it upgrades to the level 2 version.
Right. You can see why I was a little confused on that, right? That's a little...
Yes, I know which part you're talking about. It is worded a little weirdly, yes. But yes, what his point is, you can't look at the level 1 ability and be like, oh, if I could double that up, that'd be great. Most of the foci, I don't think doubling up the level 1 ability would even be worth it anyway, so I don't know that it's a huge problem, but yes, in the off chance that it becomes an issue, no, you can't do that.
Had a feeling.
Yeah. Your types of foci, for a couple of examples, you have alert, which is based kind of like the alert feat. You get a bonus in combat, you get a bonus in initiative. Actually, you always act first. Correction, you always act first in initiative. And you gain the notice skill as a bonus. A lot of the foci give you a bonus skill. So like, for example, the armsman gives you stab as a bonus skill. So if your stab is at level 0, it upgrades to level 1. It's also worth pointing out at character creation, you cannot have a skill above level 1. You're just not that good, Jim. You're just not that cool. So if something says that you upgrade a skill that you already have at level 1, you just take something else. You do also get a free skill to throw literally wherever the fuck you want at the end of character creation to just represent like, my character did this other thing for a part of their life, no biggie. Like my character was a warrior, but I'm going to take administer because he did some bureaucratic work at one point. He was in the military, stuff like that. The close combat focus makes you like good at getting into a pistol fight, bringing a pistol to a knife fight, basically. Die hard makes you harder to kill. The healer focus makes you better at getting people up. Most of the ones you would want are there. And then basically the final touches is like I said, you get the free skill, you figure out your saves and everything. You add up your attack bonuses, your HP, so on and so forth. Then it briefly mentions equipment packages. These are what they sound like. You can take a package of equipment and the game says, here you go, here's the list, this is what you get. Or you can get what is it? I think you roll for the starting credits.
You roll for your money, yeah.
Yeah, it's 2d6 times 100. Which means if you roll well, you could have 1,200 credits, which is more than any of the equipment packages are going to give you. So again, take the guarantee option if you want the safety, roll for it if you want to risk it for a biscuit for a better chance. That is kind of a philosophy across the board with this game.
I've noticed.
Yes, very common. And then there's a whole page, if you're really lazy, there's the quick character creation page, which just gives you a big old table, tells you what stats to pick, what your HP is, and all your bonuses, which foci, blah, blah, blah. Just gives you the whole list of here's what you do. If you're feeling particularly lazy.
It's very funny.
Yeah, it's good to have, though. And then I think does it also tell you what to pick for like leveling, or is it just saying for? Yeah, I think it also mentions what to grab as you level.
Yes, gives you like if you want this, go for this.
Yeah. Then psionics. So this game does a lot of something I will say. If I were to have a particular critique of this game, and this is mostly a personal critique, it's not even really a this is bad kind of thing. Mr. Kevin Crawford loves to be very verbose. Bro,
oh my God.
Bro is very flowery in his language. So a lot of the book is the rules and the world building stuff are like integrated.
It's so dense.
Yes.
You were
now,
like,
granted,
I was like, oh, it's 300 pages. It can't be that long. And then I started reading. It was like, oh.
There is a lot of tables and shit. So the 300 pages is taken up by like tables and other things too. But yes, he does have a habit of like the rules and the world building are smushed kind of into one. But I will give the man credit. He writes very well. So like, if you're not rushing and you're just here to read, it is a good read. Like he's a good writer. But if you're trying, the reason it bugs me is only because as a book to read, it's fine. I don't really, no major complaints. When you're trying to reference a rule in the middle of a session, that's when I get annoyed.
Yeah, I can imagine this being kind of a pain in the dick to read.
It's a little,
like, oh, where do I find this? Where do I find this? Where do I find this? And it's been one sentence in a 3-paragraph description of a mechanic. Like, dude. He
does have like tables and other things and like a quick reference page and stuff to try and help, but it's a little bit of a difficult game to reference. But anyway, so the reason I'm bringing that up is because the psychic chapter starts with a big chunky block of world building stuff about why characters are psychic and where psionic powers and stuff come from. The game doesn't necessarily have a preset world in that you're intended to make your own sector of space, but it has a predefined history of what happened before your campaign started. So that stuff. So like he mentions psychics are referred to MES, metadimensional extroversion syndrome, and like when do children manifest it, and like how is it handled in psychic schools and all. There's the lore is there. We're not going to go through any of the lore stuff here, not why we're here, but it's there if you're interested. So let's focus on the important things. Psychic skills are divided into the disciplines that I mentioned before. And they go from level 0 to level 4, just like regular skills. You can't, if you're not a psychic or a partial psychic, you can't utilize psychic abilities in any way. That doesn't mean everybody has psychic powers at level -1. That is not a thing. You either have them or you don't. When you pick up when you pick a discipline, so like you pick psychic as your class, you then get to pick a discipline. I think if you're a partial psychic, if I remember correctly, you pick 1, and if you're full psychic, you pick 2. You get the core technique of that discipline, which then auto levels as you level up, because you level psychic skills the way you level regular skills. And the core technique levels up as you level it, and then there are sub-techniques that you can pick up if you want for the spending of additional skill points. And you acquire skill points when your character levels. So for example, the core technique on biopsionics is Psychic Sucker. When you touch, the Psychic's touch can automatically stabilize a wounded target as a main action. This power must be used on a target within 6 rounds of their collapse and does not function on a target if they have been decapitated or killed by heavy weapons. It's the GM's decision as to whether a target is intact enough or not for this power to work. This being another example of the game building in that open-endedness. What if the character got burned alive? Well, GM, that's up to you. Right?
Yep.
And then as you level biopsionics, Psychic Sucker automatically gets better, and then if you want to take the other techniques, you can, such as one of them being Remote Repair, which basically makes it so your Psychic Sucker, instead of being a touch ability, can go out to 100 meters. This ability is really, really good and was the bane of my existence for a particular reason.
I was going to say, this feels like a GM's bane. Because it's like, oh, it stabilizes and it brings you up to combat and basically makes all your boo-boos go away. And you can do it super far away. Great. Wonderful.
Yes. Now, granted, combat is a lot meaner in this game, so players do need stuff like this sometimes. But yeah.
I do like, real quick as an aside, I do like that when you go down, you're not just useless like you are in 5e. Like it literally says you can still move, assuming you aren't blown up, right? It's like if you're hit with a heavy weapon, you're hit with a rocket launcher,
assuming you're not
GG.
eviscerated.
But if you're down, you can crawl to safety. You know, you can crawl for cover or make your way to your allies so they can make their way to you. It's not like, oh, well, you're 40 feet away and I only have 30 feet of movement and I'm not going to waste a dash because then I can't heal you anyway. I'm just going to attack. You know what I mean? Like, there is some interplay that can go on.
What I was going to say is the psychic character in my game focus mainly on telepathy, and oh boy, is it frustrating when you could just read every old nerd's mind. And like, you do have to make saving throws and stuff like that, and like you can resist it, but normal everyday people, you know, random office worker ladies are not going to resist psychic telepathy very often. They don't have the stats for that. So, you know, for example, you probably remember this story, Isaiah, where one of my players read the mind of a secretary woman to find out where she lives, proceeded to then go to her house, murder her, cut her up, stuff her in her own freezer, use their alien powers to then mimic themselves to become her, and then go to her job and pretend to be her after they read their mind and got all their details.
Yeah. You know, of all of the things to be like, guys, what the fuck? Yeah, that's it. I have a plan. She'll do it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, telepathy was the bane of my existence.
Are we the baddies?
Well, it was an evil campaign, so yes, they were the baddies. They were explicitly an evil alien cult. So yes.
Right.
They were 100% the baddies. So the way that psychic powers are handled in this game, because you don't have spell slots of any kind, you have effort. And basically you use an ability and you commit effort, and as your effort accrues, that's kind of your psychic ammo count. How long you commit the effort of an ability is based on the ability. So for example, an ability might say commit effort for the scene. And this game does not use bespoke time units. Like it doesn't say 10 minutes, 15 minutes, an hour. It does for a couple of things, but for the most part, it doesn't care about specific time. So if it says you commit effort for the scene, your effort score goes up by 1. Let's say your maximum effort is 5 or whatever. You go up by 1 effort, so you have 1 out of 5. Until the end of that scene, and then the effort goes away. If it says you have to commit effort for the day, that means you have to commit effort until you go to sleep. Effort is always reset when you rest, and it's always done in increments of 1. I will say, although I do like the effort system, it is a little generous, I think, in this game, because I don't feel like my players were ever in a situation where they felt like they were running out of effort, or very rarely. So there is that to keep in mind a little bit. Then the game also, psychics have an ability called torching, which fictionally is described as you frying your own fucking neurons with your cosmic psychic powers. To use more psychic abilities. But basically what you do is you go over your effort limit, and then you make a roll on a table and permanently lower attributes. And if you lower your attributes too low, you just become a violent sociopath. So yeah, that's fun. Torching, in-game mechanic to go over your effort limit. But like I said, because I feel like effort is maybe a little too generous in the game, my players literally never use torching. Never saw it once. So I do love the idea of it. And there's also some cool lore about how people turn into feral psychics by torching their own brain neurons and just going ballistic and turning into like ravaging animals, basically. So cool lore.
I don't think the game describes a way to come back from that.
No, you literally can't. The game says you have fried your own brain. There is just no way to, you can't, you're fucked.
Well, so I'm in the sense of like, if another psychic heals your brain.
They can't. Yeah, the idea is that because you did it to yourself, you have fried those pathways with your own psychic ability, so there's no reversing it.
Well, they get off better than psychers do, because you know what happens when you overtax your brain as a psycher in 40K?
You summon demons usually.
Summon demons.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah.
You just all demons.
Whoops, all demons. The other way that psychic powers are sort of managed / limited is system strain, which basically is just how much your body can handle abuse. So like psychic powers will increase your system strain, but so will cybernetics and drugs, for example. And if you max out on system strain, you just can receive no further benefit from those things. So like if your system strain is maxed out and someone tries to use psychic healing on you, it just doesn't work. So that's the other kind of primary way that's like managed.
So I may have missed this, but like in this case of like cybernetics, right?
Yes. Can
you unapply cybernetics?
I believe it depends on the cybernetic. I think some of them, if I remember correctly, it says some of them can be removed, but some of them can't. I think it depends. And I think it also depends on what kind of tech you have around. So
yeah, I suppose if you're at like a full-on medical facility, they can just, grow you a new arm or whatever.
You're right, exactly. And in fact, I believe one of the cybernetics is literally like replacement bio limb, basically. So yeah, it very much depends. And a little GM discretion, whether you would let him or not or whatever. So now we're at the core systems. That was character creation stuff. Now we're at the core systems. I'm not going to describe every fucking psychic power, just so you know. There's a lot of them though, so you got plenty to pick from.
So many.
There's a ton of psychic powers, and they are all very cool. I will actually call out one because I just thought about it. Telekinetic Armory is one that one of my players used a lot. It's fucking sick. You summon telekinetic psychic armor and a 6 psychic sword or whatever kind of psychic weapon. You just summon, you're like a Hexblade Warlock situation. You just summon magic weapons and just dunk on nerds. It's very cool. Anyway, the basic mechanics. All right, so how does this game actually function? A lot like old school D&D, as we've established. So a lot of things are very similar. For example, you have saving throws. How do they work? Like saving throws.
Really quick, I just counted. There are 63 independent psychic actions.
Yeah, there's a lot of psychic powers. And they're broken up into the different types and stuff too.
Yeah, the schools.
Yeah, the various disciplines focus on different things. It's very cool. We could spend 45 minutes on just that. Saving throws. You roll a d20. So saving throw, you don't roll 2d6 for saving throws. You do actually roll a d20. Instead of 5es, like one saving throw per stat, this game uses 3. You have a physical, an evasion, and a mental. And the way it determines it is your physical is decided by it's 16 minus your level minus the better of your strength or con. And then your evasion is dex or int, I think. And then your mental is wisdom what are the fucking pairings? Wisdom and no, fuck. Mental saves are, god damn it, I'm blanking. I'm gonna cry.
Physical, evasion, and mental?
Physical is the better of your strength or your con. Evasion is the better of your dex or intelligence. Wisdom is the better of your charisma. And mental is the better of your charisma and wisdom. Sorry.
I'm not gonna lie. I was just gonna let you struggle bust it, but I was like, oh, this is getting bad. I got it. Point
being, if you're level 1 and you have a +1 to your dexterity, let's say, then your evasion save will be 14. And when you make a save, you have to roll a d20 and go. You have to beat your number. So you want your saves to be lower, not higher, because you have to beat them. So save stats go down. Skills, like I already described, you roll 2d6 plus modifiers. Beat a DC, bibbidi bop, bibbidi boo. Players can help each other with skill checks. Basically, the player says, I'm trying to do X. The teammate says, GM, can I help them by doing Y? The GM says, yes, give me this roll. If they succeed, they have to beat the same DC as what the DC of the other player is. they can add a +1. You can only ever add a +1 because, again, we're dealing with 2d6, so you don't want to let players stack too many bonuses or the math gets all wiggity wonkety. So only one player can add a +1 to the situation. Nice and straightforward. You have opposed checks. They work like opposed checks. Need I describe anything? I don't think so.
No.
Combat. Combat's actually like not that exciting. It's pretty simple in this game. But you're going to be getting into combat a lot less in this game than you would in something like 5e because fights are more dangerous and just generally more lethal. And the stuff that will make combat interesting is less about like, oh, look at all these cool abilities my character has, and more about the tactics of the situation and like what's going on around me. You know, we're in a factory in a shootout. Do I have cover? Can I move across the belts to get to a different room? It's more focused on that kind of stuff. The actual, most of the time players are just going to move, shoot. It's going to be a lot more range combat because sci-fi games, so you're generally going to have less melee combat because why would I use a sword when I have laser guns?
I have a gun.
Yeah. Initiative works the same. Surprise works pretty much the same as 5e. You don't get a turn if you're surprised. You have, there's 4 action types. You have your main action, your move action, your on-turn action, and instant actions. Main actions are main actions. Move action is specifically an action in this game, so some abilities will actually use your move action to do something. So it's not like 5e where you just have movement speed. It is actually an action. On turn is essentially your bonus action, but there is technically no limit to how many on-turn actions a player can take. That limit is kind of up to the GM on if they think it is reasonable or not for you to do, you know, X amount of on-turn actions in this particular situation.
Yeah, okay. So that's what I had a feeling that this was like the bonus equivalent.
It is.
But it's like...
It's a little more free flow than a bonus action, though.
It's more free flow. It's a little more convoluted. I feel like if you were not used to this going into it, you would probably struggle to be like, well, can I do an on-turn here? And then you're like, well, yeah. And then you go, okay, but can I also do this thing? And then you're like, Basically, if you're 5e coded, you're going to struggle on this one first run.
So the reason it's done that way mainly is because, for example, a psychic power might say, as an on-turn action, you know, turn on your brain laser thingy. And then you say to the GM, okay, I turn on my psychic power. Can I also open the door? Right? Because it doesn't take me any time. There's no amount of time spent on my psychic power activating. It's just what the game tells me to do. Can I also just open the door? And the GM could say, yeah, sure. The player might say, okay, because drawing a readied weapon is an on-turn action. The player might say, can I draw my weapon, open the door, and then shoot into the room? And the GM goes, well, main action, on-turn. Yeah, those 2 on-turn actions are reasonable. If the player says, can I drop prone, open the door, aim at the console, fire at the console specifically, the GM may be, all right, too many things. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of the idea. So it's less... I think the intention is for you as the player to not necessarily describe, or you as the player aren't saying, I'm taking X action. You as the player say, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. GM, can I do all of that? And then GM kind of looks at the action economy and says yes or no. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yes, it could be a little, there might be a little brain twinge of like, I don't know how I should rule this if you're GMing this. But honestly, you get over it pretty quick. It's there, but you learn to kind of go with the flow a little bit, especially because, again, combat doesn't happen that often, so it doesn't stress you out that much. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then you have instant actions. Instant actions are like a combination of a free action and a reaction, because you could do as many as you want and you can do them on other people's turns. There's not a ton of instant actions in the game. Usually it's like a special thing. So certain psychic powers, for example, you might get hit by something and then as an instant action, you can put up your cool psychic force field, right? That might be it's basically a reaction.
I sort of thought of it like a free action, like a drop your gun.
It can also be that. It occupies kind of both spaces. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the actions are a little looser than you might be used to in like a 5e. And again, this is hearkening back to older school D&D, where it's like the game was not as prescriptive about what kind of actions you could specifically take. You know, it was a little more broad. This is arguably even broader than older school D&D, but I can't say that 100%. Attacking and hitting enemies basically works as you expect, with the one major difference being shock damage. And shock damage is essentially guaranteed damage that you get against an enemy if their AC is at or lower than your weapon's shock value. So if you have a weapon with a shock of 1 point of damage, 15 AC, and you attack a target with 15 or less AC, you automatically do 1 damage even if you miss your attack. That's how shock works. Ranged weapons are not going to have shock. That's more of a melee weapon thing. And the idea is, like, fictionally, you're not hitting your sword swing maybe, but you're tiring them out, you're stressing them, you're like backing them against a wall, like that kind of a thing.
Yeah, I imagined it. They bring up like a cudgel or something, in the idea that, yeah, you blocked it, but the staff shock now runs through your hand, and now your arms
you blocked
are killing
it,
you.
but it fucking hurts your arm. Yeah, exactly. That kind of a vibe. The game does have a list of common combat actions. So melee attack, ranged attack. It has a thing called a snap attack, which is basically you burn your reaction and your main action to attack someone on their turn, but you take a penalty to it. You have a thing called total defense, where you just hole up and increase your AC. You have club up a weapon, which is just, you pistol whip a bitch. You have your basic run action, which is how you move. Fighting withdrawal, which is your disengage. Ready or stowing shit, which is like taking stuff out of a backpack. So there are a couple of actions that everyone can do. And then the game also encourages you to just, if the players suggest a thing, GM, if you think they should do it, then let them do it. That style of play. I don't need to keep explaining the open-endedness, but that's a continuation of that,
Yeah.
You have a page on forcing enemies to move, disarming enemies, execution attacks, 2-weapon fighting. Nothing crazy here. You can push people, you can knock weapons out of their hands. Execution attacks are basically you sort of ready your shot or sneak up on a dude with a knife and just stab them and kill them. They have to make a save, I think, otherwise they die instantly. It's for that kind of sneaky murder stuff. It's a good thing that the game has this, specifically because combat is so lethal, so sneaking up and shanking the shit out of a dude, quite useful.
Yeah.
And this rule definitely came up quite a few times in my game. And then 2-weapon,
like how to take them out.
Yeah.
Problem 1 going dark.
2-weapon fighting is just, dual wielding pistols or swords or whatever. The game doesn't actually give you another attack. It basically says you take a penalty, but you get a bonus on your damage, because the idea is you're swinging both the swords at the same time when you're doing the attack action. So it doesn't give you any extra actions to dual wield, but it gives you like a potential damage bonus. And then I lost my spot. There we go. Damage and stuff, pretty straightforward. If someone goes down to 0 HP, they are generally dead. You do have non-lethal like damage in this game, but you need to have something that can do non-lethal damage. You can't just like declare it like you can in 5e. But if you non-lethally take someone out, they recover a hit point after a minute and wake back up. And then, of course, if you wanted, you could just clunk them over the head again. just cudgel them.
Oh my.
Yeah. If you're brought down lethally, you have 6 rounds if you're a PC or an NPC whose life the GM cares enough about. You have 6 rounds. An ally can make a heal check on you. If they have absolutely nothing to use, it's DC 10. If they have proper tools, it's DC 8. If they have an item called a Lazarus Patch, it's DC 6. And considering that you're rolling 2d6 plus modifiers, DC 6 is quite easy to hit. If you're stabilized, you get up with 1 HP after 10 minutes. However, if you take any further damage, you're just fucking dead.
You're just done. Yeah.
You're just dead. So if you get up from that, so basically there's no death yo-yos in this game. You get 1 yo-yo. You get 1 up and down, and that's it, bitch. Any more after that, and you're cooked. The game also says, obviously, if a player is shot point blank with a rocket launcher, you can't sew them back up. They're just fucking dead.
They're just fucked.
Yeah, they're just fucked. Also, every subsequent turn that they're down, the DC check does go up by 1. And then to cure the 1 HP fragility, you need a week of rest. Assuming you're on a tech level 4 planet, which is sci-fi planets, it takes longer if you're on lower tech level planets. So, you know. And now we start getting into the realm of some subsystems. So there's hacking in the game. This is where we get into the area of some of these rules certain games will use, and some of these rules nobody will use. My game, we definitely used hacking. Basically, the assumption is that there's a whole chunk of lore explaining all that, like justifying the hacking stuff. But basically, the game assumes that stuff will have small local area networks that you need to physically connect to. You can't do the cyberpunk thing of hack the Wi-Fi from 500 miles away and then the hacker character never engages with the fight or the scenario. You can't do that.
No, actually, what you do have to do is the actual Cyberpunk 2077 thing of like, oh, the internet's gone. Ah, shit, I gotta go run over to the computer and actually
I gotta go physically plug in. Yes, exactly. If you have an hour of planning, you can get into a system with a main action. So, you know, you have time. If you don't, it takes you 10 minutes. Or you could try to rush with no prep, but it ups your DC. Straightforward. There's a table of hacking actions with a bunch of DCs based on the action you're taking. So like getting general info about something will be DC 10, for example. And you make an intelligence. The check is intelligence program. Program covers hacking stuff. And again, all of the checks in this game are always attribute skill because it's not predetermined what those combinations are necessarily. If you try to push deeper into the network, the hacking gets harder and the DCs go up subsequently. There's also modifiers based on circumstances, such as the alarm has been raised. That makes it harder to hack things. The hacking is actually fun, but nice and easy to use in this game. So I'm a fan because it's pretty straightforward. It's not as in-depth as a cyberpunk game, but I don't know about you, I would not want that in a game like this. Personally.
No, I think it's far more interesting in a narrative and gameplay sense to be like, okay, I'm hacking into the system. I'm hacking the mainframe, boys. And rather than be like, okay, well, now just make this check. Yeah. Okay, now they're going to oppose you with a security check. Okay, so they did win, but you can still chant. Now you have to try to counter hack check. You don't want to shadow run it and just have like 4 results that need to be resolved before you can do the thing.
This is not a game focused on hacking like that. I like the autocorrect there. It corrected line shunts to lime shunts. I'm shunts. There are game mentions.
No, I just think line piece.
What?
Have you never seen?
I don't think so.
Okay, there's a great video from College Humor back in the day of like whatever gods controlled Tetris.
Oh,
it's just
I think
Zeus
I
on
have
his chair
seen
being
that.
like
Yes.
L block,
Yes.
reverse,
yes.
squiggly,
Yes.
and then he's like, what will he do next? Line piece. No, my lord. No, we don't have the space. Line piece. No, please. No, he's going to lose the game. Line piece. You are a cruel and angry god.
I do remember that. Yes. Yep. Line piece. Yes.
Line piece.
Anyway, so basically the game assumes that some security systems will have better security. So you can buy a thing called a line shunt, which is hacking deeper into the mainframe and get you in the squigglies. And because it's a space game, you might go to a planet that has different data protocols than your planet, and then you have to learn the new data protocols or pay somebody to teach it to you. Basically, you have to learn different code languages on different planets.
That's so funny. I can't.
It's not like a guarantee thing, but if you go to some backwater ass planet where they're running Windows 95 and you're like, fuck, I'm working on Windows 86 here, dude. Or 806, maybe I should say. And then we get advancement. So advancement is really directed to the point. The game has 10 levels, 10 character levels with the option to push with an optional rules to go beyond level 10, but the optional rules for that are sparse, I would say. The game recommends about 3 XP per session. At level 10, you need 93 XP accrued. XP doesn't reset, so it's like D&D, it just goes up. So again, I think my players hit max level, ironically, around the 30 session mark. So, yeah. Yeah. And when you level up, you get extra XP, extra HP, you up your attack bonus, you up your saving throws, you gain skill points to spend on skills and attributes or psychic skills if you're psychic. And then at levels 2, 5, 7, and 10, you get additional foci. Nice and straightforward. The one thing you do need to keep in mind with this game is for HP, the way it works is you roll a pool of D6s equal to based on your level or equal to your level, I think it is, or something like that. If the number you roll is greater than your current HP, you take the new total. If it is not greater, you get 1 pity point of HP.
That's kind of nuts. Like,
yeah,
that could really fuck you on the HP. And I remember you told us a story where it did do that.
It fucked Sam. He had a lot of pity points of HP, for sure. But again, he wasn't the combat character anyway, so it didn't really matter that much. You can also circumvent this problem by playing a warrior, because playing a warrior gives you a flat bonus to that roll every time you level. And there's a foci that will give you an additional flat bonus. So Sam and the psychic character, not a lot of HP. The warrior character, fucking dickload of HP. So
yeah, I imagine, just being not the girthiest of girthy.
Yeah, so it is overcome. It can be overcome. But what I mean is, if your HP is 10 and you roll 3d6, if you roll a 12, then your HP is now 12. If you roll an 8, your HP just goes up by 1, so it's 11. That's how that works. And there's no pity rule on that one or anything. Well, the 1 HP is the pity, but there's no alternative. You have to roll HP. It's your only option. Some people might not like that. Doesn't bother me that much.
Yeah, well, it's weird that that's the only one where you have to take the gamble on a game that sort of prides itself on the safer approach.
It is. Yeah, it's interesting that the safer approach wasn't offered. I guess the idea is the safer approach is play a fucking warrior.
That doesn't seem like a...
It's not necessarily, but...
Yeah, I kind of disagree with that, where it's like... Because then the game is sort of telling you that you not necessarily have to, but you very much should do this thing if you want a chance to have more HP. Like, it seems kind of...
Yeah. But again, keep in mind, not a combat game. So if you look at everyone in your group and everyone goes, we have really shit HP, no one get in a fight. No fighting. No, it's the Peaky Blinders scene. No fucking fighting. Right? Like, nobody fight. Just don't do it.
I love that scene so much because he points at Arthur, who's like, he points at Arthur, who for the once in his life was like, I wasn't going to start nothing.
I wasn't planning on it. Yeah. But like, the idea is like, yeah, if everybody's got really shit health, just don't get in fights. And the game gives you a shitload of tools to avoid fights. It's not a D&D situation where every ability you get is a fighting ability. You do have a ton of non-combat stuff you can do. And the game does not reward you for combat in any way. In fact, I'm pretty sure it says somewhere in the book, I don't remember where, that your reward for combat is surviving.
I didn't catch that, but that's funny if it is.
I believe it says that, yeah. Your reward for winning combat is you get to live. Enjoy. Some brief rules on environmental hazards. Not a lot to say here. You got falling damage, poisons, diseases, radiations, and the vacuum of space. There aren't any specific lists. There's no list of diseases and poisons. It just recommends some things you could potentially do to the PC, like lowering a stat or a skill or whatever. And then radiation has the most specific rules of the hazards, but that's because space game, so that makes sense. And the vacuum of space one is pretty short because the game's kind of like, if you get exposed to the vacuum of space, good luck, bro. You're not going to last long.
Yeah, it's like you're likely cooked. Like,
yeah, you probably did. And then we get a quick, after the environmental hazards, we get a quick system quick reference sheet, which has some useful stuff on it. It just summarizes a lot of things we were just talking about. And then we get to equipment and vehicles, which I'm sure made Isaiah all kinds of excited.
It did, yes.
Because there's quite a lot of good. I like the way this game handles equipment and encumbrance and stuff like that, because there's a lot of equipment to do lots of different things. Encumbrance is fairly straightforward. There's a lot of like, there's a lot of good, easy, not easy is the wrong word. It's well designed, I guess is the easiest way to put it. So the way encumbrance works is you have an encumbrance score of readied items and stowed items. A readied item is something like a gun in a holster or a grenade tied to your hip or something like that. That's a readied item. And then a stowed item is something that's like stashed in a backpack or a satchel that would take you a minute to get out. So if you have your pistol at the bottom of your book bag and you get into a fight, it's going to take you a second to get your book bag off your back and fucking fish the pistol out of the bag, right? You can have a number of readied items equal to half your strength score and a number of stowed items equal to your strength score. So if your strength is 10, you can have 5 readied items and 10 stowed items. Right? Cool. Easy. Nice. Straightforward. Pulling out the reason that it matters is whipping out a readied item is an on-turn action. Whipping out a stowed item is a main action. So basically anything that you want to be able to whip out real quick in a fight, you want to have readied. So, your pistol, your health pack, your grappling hook, you want to have readied. And encumbrance in this game is just listed. So it'll, like, certain items, most items are 1 encumbrance. Some items are 0 encumbrance. A couple of items will say 2 encumbrance. And encumbrance is just an abstract value of the weight, but also just how awkward the thing is to like carry around. So a thunder gun is 2 encumbrance because it's heavier, but also because it's a big fucking gun. It's a little awkward to carry around. Right.
It's similar in a couple ways to the Fantasy Flight system, especially the way they handle like bigger weaponry. Like the light repeating blaster, I think takes like 2 or 3 gear points or whatever they call it, and it's like meant to be, this is very heavy. It requires a strap and a bipod to use effectively.
Yes. And And then if you go over your encumbrance, there's a movement penalty, basically. And if you go way over, it's a quite drastic movement penalty. And then in Worlds Without Numbers, there's actually some items that you can bundle together. I forget. So like torches, you can wrap into like groups of 3 or 5 or something like that. So 5 torches becomes 1 encumbrance because you like wrap them all together and stash them away nicely in your backpack and shit like that. I don't think Stars has any items like that, but yeah. Also, what was it? Oh shit! I just lost my train of thought. I don't know. It'll come to me later, hopefully. Okay. But yes, the encumbrance system is super simple. It's good to use. Works great in gameplay. The ready and stowed system is awesome. Big fan. It also doesn't have that D&D problem where you're like, GM, did I pull my sword at this part, or is it my action to pull? Did I use my free act? No. Readied weapon, on turn action, done. Not readied weapon, main action, right? Like, it's stowed, main action, done. The game uses credits for money. It's a sci-fi game, so you're not really carrying around money so much as you are, wiring money to people. It does also mention like, oh, you might end up on a world where they don't use your currency. You're gonna have to figure that out or whatever. Stuff like that. Again, it's a space game, so the game addresses a lot that not every world is gonna be standardized. The rules in this game are assuming that you're on a planet that is part of the greater galactic, like empire or whatever. So everyone has like an agreed system. It's sort of the baseline, but you could end up on a planet where the baseline is out the window. Armor. There is quite a few pieces of armor in this game. Did I skip a bit? Oh, I did. Yeah. I'm
Okay.
looking at my notes. Huh? Yes.
I would say now I'm.
Oh yeah. I forgot. Technology levels. Really briefly. It goes from tech level 0 to tech level 6. 0 is like caveman shit. Tech level 1 is basic pre-gunpowder. Tech level 2 is like steam power and gunpowder. Tech level 3 is like our world right now. Tech level 4 is what's called post-tech. It is Star Wars. It's, space sci-fi stuff. Tech level 5 is called pre-tech because this game actually, the history of the universe in this game is that there was kind of a space-wide apocalypse. So pre-tech is really advanced tech from before the space-wide apocalypse. It's very Mass Effect in that way, right? The Prothean technology is better than our technology kind of thing.
It's the archaeotech, the Dark Age technology stuff.
That vibe that's in a lot of sci-fi games. And then tech level 6 is just crazy magical bullshit that no one understands. It's probably technology, but it might just be space magic. I don't know. Then we get to armor. Armor armor gives you an AC score. You have to beat the AC to hit the person. Armor has an encumbrance. I believe the encumbrance is considered nullified when you're wearing armor. I forget exactly. It does what you would expect. All of the armor has a tech level, and then there are armor kind of has typings. So primitive armor is like you're wearing, fucking plate mail or some shit. And the reason primitive armor is a relevant tag is because if you're wearing primitive armor and somebody shoots you with a laser gun, the armor does nothing. Might as well not.
Yeah, it just gets completely circumvented based on tech score.
Totally ignored. Really cool. Yeah, so like you might look at, there's a primitive armor in the game that's full plate layered mail that is AC 17. And you're like, oh, well, that's better than secure clothing and it's cheaper. It's because it's primitive. So, yeah, it has a higher AC if you get into a knife fight or something like that, but it's not saving you if somebody shoots you with a laser gun. It's just completely ignored. And then there's street armor, which is like something that a PC could wear that's probably not going to get them in trouble with the authorities. There's combat armor, which is like, hey, dude, you are definitely wearing armor. What you looking for some trouble there, pal? And then there's power armor, which is it's power armor. You know, say more.
Old T-51 suit of power armor.
Yeah. The highest AC thing in the game though is called a field emitter panoply, which is technically powered armor, but it's your body is covered in like nodes that emit a force field sheath around you. So it doesn't look like you're necessarily wearing armor, but you have a sick force field.
Actually, so, damn it, did you know this? This is a little bit of a tangent. Did you know that the like really derpy looking power armor from Fallout 1 is, technically speaking, the second most advanced suit of power armor in the series, and like the armor from Fallout 3 that looks a lot cooler is actually the dinkiest, shittiest armor in the universe?
I did not know that, no.
It's very dumb.
That is kind of weird though, but
yeah, I don't. It's a little goofy, and then obviously like the Enclave armor, the weird bug armor that in Fallout 2.
I definitely don't know what the bug armor looks like.
The XO1 armor, it's just the most. It is the best armor in the game. I just think that the really derpy suit with the little like toggleable little light switch on the forehead is like this is the strongest suit we have ever made. Still, the Enclave made it better, but it's fine.
Okay. Good little Fallout tangent. I have nothing to add to that, but I believe you.
I would hope so.
Yes.
I played enough of the fucking games to know.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm just saying. I don't play Fallout, so I have nothing to add there. But that is funny. I feel like that happens a lot, though, in games.
Well, yeah,
like,
it's like, oh, well, this thing's iconic, so we have to make this the coolest, and it's like, but it's the stupidest. And
well,
it's like,
either it's iconic or the first game just establishes that that thing is so fuck off OP that you can't reasonably make something better than it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, Fallout and Power Armor in Fallout 1, you were like basically an untouchable god.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you have any commentary on armor here, but
no, I think it's really cool. I really like that there's an AC, but also the tech level, and the tech level just circumvents the AC. Although I do find it a little derpy that war paint, which is basically just some reinforced clothing.
Yes.
With some gang signs thrown on it, counts as tech level 4 when they literally just describe it as a shirt with some Kevlar woven into it. I think that's
the reason is because
goofy,
it says war paint is fashioned of scrounged scrap of TL4 materials. That's why.
Yeah, I
you're
get
not
it.
wearing a stop sign. You're wearing a sci-fi stop sign.
Right. Still
That's
dumb
why.
as fuck, but I guess slightly more understandable.
Yeah. Also, like, there's something called storm armor.
Yes, that
sounds cool. And then you have your ranged weapons. There's quite a lot. There's almost a whole page of ranged weapons, like a whole table. There's a lot of ranged weapons. It's a sci-fi game. You have guns. There's not a ton of like special rules for weapons necessarily, in that, it's a shotgun. It does damage. You shoot a guy. It has an ammo count, all that stuff. But a couple of the higher up, the more powerful weapons have some special rules to them. So like thunder guns, for example, which are big like energy bazookas. If you hit like a structure with a thunder gun, it does like max damage. It does extra damage and fucks up the structure. So there's some stuff like that. And like laser pistols, for example, if they're firing in like a harsh sandstorm, you get a -4 penalty because the laser has a hard time firing through like the debris in the air.
I did like that a lot. That was really cool.
Yeah. And all of the weapons are described. They all have like descriptors and explanations of what they are. And there are projectile and energy weapons. Fun fact, in the first version of Stars, you had to have different skills for different weapons. So you could be good with like energy weapons and not know how to fire like a regular pistol.
That's an interesting idea. It sort of falls apart on the execution, but I like the idea.
It became frustrating quick. Yeah. Because I did play, side note, I did play the original version of Stars. I have actually played both versions.
Oh, okay. And I'm assuming you like this one more?
Yeah, like I said, there's no reason to play the old one anymore. This one just does it better. Then we have our melee weapons. The melee weapons have significantly less going on with them because it's a sci-fi game. You're not going to be getting into a lot of knife fights or anything like that. So instead of specific melee weapons, you just have small, medium, and large, and then primitive and advanced, and that's pretty much it. And then 2 special ones, a stun baton and a suit ripper. But yeah, there's less going on with the melee weapons because sci-fi game. Whereas Worlds Without Number, less going on with the ranged weapons because fantasy game. You know.
Right.
And you could very easily, if you want, take the weapons from Worlds and apply them to Stars. And then you have heavy weapons.
I can have a cool, my sick actual katana in Stars Without
Number. Exactly. Heavy weapons are your big ass, your big dick weapons that you need to brace or mount on something. You know, rail guns, vortex cannons, fucking grenade launchers or some shit. You know, stuff like that. And there is literally a rail gun, by the way. That's not like an example. There's a rail gun.
Yeah.
It's good stuff. And then there is quite a big list of general equipment.
I do think, as a side note, I think it's really funny that the railgun does less damage than a rocket launcher.
Yeah, well, it's
that would not be the case.
Damage. Adventuring, you know, your general equipment basically is your D&D adventuring gear. You have stuff, you know, you have ammo, communications, computer tech, pharmaceuticals for healing, and then like field equipment, which is to say like telescoping poles, survival kit, survey scanner, rope, thermal flares, trade goods, trade materials, glow bug, grapnel launcher, grav chute, grav harness, and these do all have descriptions because the next like 2.5 pages is describing every piece of gear. More than that, 3 or 4 pages. Much. Yeah.
Yeah.
So 3, for somebody like Isaiah,
4.
It's more than that.
5.
Jeez.
6
pages.
6.
Yeah.
Nuts.
So for somebody like Isaiah, it's a wet dream, really.
Yeah, and believe me, it was. Because again, this game does the exact same thing that I love, that I described previously, which is it gives you a very specific example of what this thing can be used for, but it leaves it open enough so that you can use it for other things.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, it tells you what it is, and then if you need some other weird uses for it, it's there.
Hashtag Rictus Erectus. It's perfect. Perfect in every way.
He was perfect in every way. Yeah, I have no complaints on the gear in this game. And then there's a brief page on lifestyle and employees and services. It's just prices for what lifestyle costs and if you want to hire somebody for something. Nothing crazy there. And then the vehicles. There's quite a lot of vehicles and stuff because sci-fi game. We got vehicles.
I think so. This is a little bit of a spoiler, but I like that you can buy a garage for your vehicle. Like, it's a little bit later on, obviously.
Yes.
You can buy a garage for your vehicle, and I got really confused because, you know, to buy a garage for your frigate-sized vehicle, you need a capital ship-sized vehicle.
Correct.
So it took me a hot second to be like, wait, what? But we got it eventually, boys.
What were you confused about?
Because I didn't realize that's how it was working. I'm like, no, a frigate would not be a capital. I mean, it shouldn't be a capital size ship. Capital is supposed to be like aircraft carrier equivalent, right? Like,
okay, yeah. You were just misreading the
yeah, effectively, yeah.
So vehicles work pretty similar to like regular combat rules. With us, there's a couple of special rules they have. So they have armor, which subtracts. So you deal damage, the armor subtracts from the damage dealt to the vehicle. And then you have speed, tonnage, and crew. Crew is how many people you need to work it. Tonnage is how much crap it can carry, which you might think, why do I need to know how much crap my vehicle can carry? Because some people play this game where they're like space truckers, basically. So you need to know that kind of thing. And speed is like a stat that you use if you're making piloting checks. So like if you're in a chase, you will roll the character's, pilot plus the vehicle's speed, basically. Like it's a modifier to apply to those situations. Or if you're making a dangerous maneuver, you will also apply the vehicle's speed. And in terms of vehicles, you got motorcycles, ground cars, hover cycles, grav cars, ATVs, helicopters, Atmo flyers, grav flyers, and grav tanks. Grav tanks, they're fun.
For those of you in the back who are confused, Atmo just means atmosphere.
Yes, Atmo flyers meaning like it's a helicopter, but it's a hovering gravity helicopter instead of using like normal rotors, basically.
Is it me or like this might be just because I'm so Dune pilled, but like the ornithopters are just the coolest thing now.
They are cool. I will give you, ornithopters are very cool. At least how they were in that movie.
Yeah, I mean
other iterations, nah, not so much.
Yeah, well, we have Golden Box and Eagle.
Yeah, not so much.
Not quite the vibe, as the kids say.
Yeah.
Just not quite my tempo.
And then continuing off vehicles, we have drones. Didn't use drones in my campaign, but they're still pretty cool. Again, they have the usual stats. They have HP and AC and all that stuff. There's different drones you can purchase for different purposes. For example, there's the Ghost Walker drone, which is like it's a stealth drone. There's, they all have a little bit of lore attached to them. Yes, you can use the drone for combat. Drones have a certain amount. They have a number. They have a what do they call it? They have a fitting stat, which is to say how many things you can stick on the drone. So fitting 4 means you can fit 4 fittings worth of shit on the drone.
How much gun can you stick on your drone?
Yeah, how much gun? It's not just gun, because there's actually quite a few. There's extra ammo, or you can stick expert systems on it, so it can like help you with hacking, or the bomber fitting for it to drop bombs, or there's actually quite a few fittings you could stick on that sucker. Again, this game has covered in tables of stuff you can stick on your toys. There's a lot of that. There's a lot of that in this game. You could stick a medical support fitting on your drone to help it heal. All sorts of fun things. But basically the idea is you use your intelligence plus plus a modifier, plus a skill, depending on what you're trying to do with the drone. So if you're shooting with the drone, you might say intelligence plus shoot to fight with the drone, or if you're piloting, it might be intelligence plus pilot or intelligence plus program, shit like that. If you want the drone to see something, you can use wisdom plus notice. The idea is the drone is sort of an extension of you, as is the way a lot of things work in this game. And I think you can also, no, never mind. I take that back. Then we have a page on cyberware. The cyberware is not super extensive in this game. Although there's still a pretty good amount of it. I'm not going to say the table is small. The table is a lot of I'm not going to count it.
It's a lot.
Right now.
No, it is a lot.
Yeah, it's quite a big table. But it's not as crazy as all of the cyberware in Cities Without Number, which is pages and pages and pages. Because that's a cyberpunk game.
I don't want to see it. But.
Oh, it's chunky boy. Basically, the idea is you equip the cyberware. You need to have, the proper money and facilities, but you get the cyberware attached, and cyberware permanently increases your system strain depending on what it is. So if you get body arsenal array implanted, which I think is like sticking weapons under the skin, I believe. That increases your system strain by 1 permanently. Whereas if you get dermal armor, which is turns your skin into armor, that increases your system strain by 2. And that's it. It permanently increases it. You have the bonus. If you want to remove it, you can. And I think, again, I don't remember exactly, but I think there's some special rules on removing certain things or whatever. But yeah, it's not super in depth with the cyberware rules because, again, not a cyberpunk game, but still plenty of shit for you to latch onto if you want to be a cool cyber ninja.
Yeah, I mean, well, so, and I do like that it's like, oh, GM, I kind of want more stuff. And you, like, because it's OSR, and because it's one of the world's without number games, you can just take the
some other
cyberpunk
games.
shit.
Yeah.
You just take it. Like,
Yep.
I feel like I think I've brought that up 3 times now, and I feel like you have to. I really don't think you can understate how great it is that the modularity of this is so deeply entwined with its design ethos.
Yeah, I mean, well, the funny thing is the modularity, when I first played this game, the modularity was not as much of a selling point because a lot of the older games that Crawford was referencing, I was like, I know they exist, but I haven't played them. So me going back into older editions of D&D and trying to grab stuff from those would be like a little harder. But now that he's made 4 of his own games that are all modular with each other, now the modularity is super useful because you can just take from the other without number games.
It's really funny, right? Because it seems like this was sort of done as a purposeful thing to be like, well, you know, let me have a game that covers the basics, right? We have our sci-fi, post-apocalypse, medieval, and cyberpunk, and then you really don't have to go anywhere else because we've covered the basics.
Yeah, like I said, I don't know if that was the plan from the beginning, but that is absolutely what it's turned into, for sure. Which, yeah, it's very cool. Me being a fan, and now that I know that the other games are out there, is gives me so many toys to play with.
I would definitely be down to play this game.
I figured you would be after you read it.
Because I keep being like, oh, I want to play a sniper, but you could really play, oh God, what's his name from Ghost in the Shell? Saito, the sniper dude who's got the like mechanical eye patch thing that like clips up and his eye like hooks into his scope.
Yeah, easy. Not even a like, no hacking required, just as is.
Yeah, what is it? What is it? Incredibly easy. Barely an inconvenience.
Barely an inconvenience. Then after the cyberware, we have artifacts. So it's a sci-fi game, so we don't have magic weapons. Instead, we have artifact gear. And basically, in universe, it's just artifacts are equipment from before the awful, what's called the psychic scream. That was sort of the space apocalypse that killed a lot of people and caused bad things to happen. So these are from before that time. They're magic items. They do magic item things. They don't have prices because the idea is that you have to find them. You can't just buy them. And you have artifact armor, artifact weapons, and artifact equipment. And they're not specific things. They're semi-generic examples of a thing. So like under the weaponry, you have absolution armaments. And it says a company specializing in energy weapons, AA pioneered several techniques for increasing energy efficiency and the penetrating power of their armaments. AA laser weapons ignore particulate matter when shooting, and all AA weapons gain a +1 to hit and +2 to damage. So the idea is it's not that it's a specific weapon, it's this company made these weapons, your player could find a pistol or a rifle or whatever from this company. So they're a little more genericized, so you could slap them on whatever kind of gear you want to potentially give your player. So if you have a player character who's like, I just want to use sniper rifles and nothing else, then you don't need to be worried that there's no sniper rifle artifact. You just take one of the cool ones and stick it on the sniper rifle. Bing, bang, boom. There's not much to say. The artifact shit is cool. It's magic items. Who's gonna complain about magic items?
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Right? Like,
they sort of remind me a little bit, another reference. They kind of remind me of the Iridian weaponry from Borderlands. Like, obviously, they're not going to have the same aesthetic. They're not going to have that weird, like, alien, wraith bony kind of thing going on. But I think they serve like a really similar premise.
I do not know the thing you referenced from Borderlands, so I'll have to take your word for it.
They're the mythic weapons in Borderlands 1. They look like cool alien guns, and they each have like a really unique like method of fire. So like one of them fires and then it ricochets the like laser around a couple times. One shoots like a pulse wave.
Makes sense.
They're legendary weapons and they do legendary weapon shit. They fire in unorthodox ways. They do a ton of damage.
Yeah. And then we get modding and building equipment, and I'm sure this also got your jimmies going.
Yes.
Yeah. So basically, you can mod and craft and do all sorts of fun shit with equipment. There are some specifics here, but again, because we're giving the brief overview on all the mechanics, basically, it's pretty simple. You need a workshop of some nature, so you can't just mod a gun on the street by yanking wrenches out of your ass. You do need a workshop, which is one of the things you could get under Starship, for example. Mods have a minimum fix skill you need to have, so it'll say, for example, the auto-targeting mod, parentheses, fix 2. That means you need to have at least the fix 2 skill to actually attach that mod. You need to be good enough to actually make it. And then you have a maintenance score for how many mods you can have going at the same time. And your maintenance is, I forget how it's calculated. Maintenance score is equal to the total of your intelligence and your con modifier plus 3 times your fix level. So intelligence plus con mod, let's say, is 2 and your fix level's 2, so that would be 6. So you can maintain 8 mods worth of shit, 8 mod points worth of mods at a given time. So if you try to go over that, you can't do it anymore, and one of your mods is going to break or break down or whatever. If you don't maintenance is assumed to be done during downtime, so it's not that you have to declare you're maintaining the equipment. It's assumed that your character is maintaining the equipment they modified. But if for some reason you can't do the maintenance, the equipment will break down, and then eventually just break completely. So like it won't work, but you can fix it, and then if you ignore it, it just breaks down completely. You can't even fix it. This also was used a couple of times.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And then you can also just build regular equipment. It takes about a month for a vehicle and about a week for other gear. You can half this time if you have an assistant. And I think you can half it again if you just do nothing except work on the equipment all day long. So if you're in downtime and your techie character is like, all right, well, we're going to be in space for a week, which is something that happens in this game quite a lot because space travel takes a lot of time. I'm just going to work on some mods and do nothing else. So they could do it faster because they're doing nothing but working on their mods, basically. And, eating and sleeping. That was also a thing Sam used quite a lot on his character, was like, I'm just going to work on this while we travel.
I'm sure. That's how, different game playing 5e, but that's how my gunslinger character was. I'm like, anytime I was on rest, I'm working on my stuff.
I'm doing stuff. Yeah, exactly. And then basically, if you're building regular gear, you can either jury rig it, you can normal build the gear, or you can make mastercraft gear. Jury rig is like, I'm going to throw some shit together really, really fast. It's going to be cheap, but it's going to break eventually. Making something normally is making something normally. And then mastercrafting is like taking extra time, but you can stick a free... If you mastercraft an item, you can stick a free mod on the item that you mastercrafted. And it doesn't count towards your maintenance. So you can have an extra one essentially. And then a jury rig device takes a quarter of the normal time to build. So basically you can make it really fast. A normal device takes twice as long as it would off the shelf. But you can build it with, so like you can find salvage in the game. And if you find enough salvage, you could slap together a gun or something like that without paying for it. But it will take some time. And then obviously the Mastercraft, it takes 10 times as long, and requires twice as much money, but you can add the modifications. And then there's a list of mods, like auto targeting, which gives you a +1 to hit, or boosted, which boosts the damage, or concealed, which is you can make the weapon like more compact and easier to hide, extended mag for more ammo, shit like that. And of course, there's the list of mods, and then of course the game is like, also, if you want, come up with your own mods, player, because that's the kind of game this is. And then the next big chunk is ships, starships. And it's a big chunk, and we've been going for a while, so we're actually going to stop here.
I was going to say, the starships are cool, but it's a lot.
Yes, there's quite a bit of stuff in the starships, and I want to give it the time. So we're going to stop here and do it next week, because we're going to be talking about this game next week. Anyway, surprise, surprise. Probably could have assumed that.
I was going to say, it's one of those cycles, isn't it?
Yeah. There is a lot of cool shit, though, and it's a sci-fi game, so of course you need a lot of fun shit for starships, because it's a fucking sci-fi game where the idea is to be flying around space doing space pirate or space trucker type shit. And there's quite a fun...
I've never played a pilot space or like a driver class. I feel like
really,
this would be the game where I'd give it a shot.
It's a good game to do it, especially because there's quite a fun space combat system.
Just give me my V-Wing interceptor equivalent, and I'm good.
Yeah. That is, so that's at least some of Stars Without Number. That's sort of, we've gone through a lot of the main core of the game. As if I didn't say it enough before. I love this game. And yeah. I mentioned, it's mostly a sandbox game, a space sandbox game, which is true, but I will say it can actually, it doesn't have to be a sandbox game. You can run other styles of space adventure type shit in this game because there's quite a lot of broad mechanics. You can do quite a few different kinds of game within it, and it will work. It'll still work great. At the core, it is still a, open-ended space adventure game, right? So it's not, if you trying to do straight up dungeon crawl D&D, it's going to fight you a little bit more, but still doable, to be honest. Like, it is still there. So yeah, don't just assume you have to only play 100% sandbox space thing, because you don't necessarily. Isaiah, I don't know if you have any closing thoughts. I've talked about this game a bunch of times in other episodes, so now that you've actually looked at it a bit yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that sounded cool in the past, but now that I've actually begun reading through it, it's something that I definitely want to play. I don't know about run.
So funny you say that. I actually think this game is more fun to run than play.
Interesting.
And we haven't gotten to the GM stuff, but I think when we get there, you'll maybe realize why. I think the real magic happens on the GM side of the table for this game.
Okay.
Like, the player side stuff is good and does the job, but the GM adds that extra sauce.
I'm curious and a bit fascinated to see, because this game looks fun as fuck to run. I would love to find it to do some like theory crafting as to how to get the most out of like an executioner style character, like really take advantage of the execution actions and just like pink a motherfucker from across the map.
it's a very doable thing, and in a way, and almost kind of encouraged. So,
that's all I need to hear.
Yeah. My players when we played were I would say quite proficient at avoiding, dodging, getting around, or getting out of combat. Quite good at that. They would come up with many schemes, to say the least. Which, if I was playing 5e, would annoy me. But in a game like this, is fine because I expect it. You know what I mean?
Are you saying you did not appreciate my scheming in 5e?
You know, it depends. Sometimes no. You know,
I just think Paper Bomb's flower bag was genius and harsh in my vibe.
That's okay. I can harsh it a little bit. I'm okay with that.
Harsh in my vibe.
That's okay. Anyway, thank you for listening. And you know, if you'd be so kind, fuck the social media. Leave a like or a rating of whatever nature, whatever it is on your podcast platform. A like or some stars. That'd be nice.
Do you remember when YouTube used to have a star rating?
No? Oh, yeah, actually, I do know that.
I was about to say, you don't remember the star?
Yeah.
This is old-fashioned white
YouTube.
Background TV logo YouTube, baby.
Yes. That's like first inception of YouTube.
Yep,
Like,
that is
Jesus
09
Christ.
YouTube, buddy boy.
Oh, boy.
Remember back in the day when you had to like go on YouTube and you're like, oh, I hope they have this song because it's only been out for a year.
Yes, yeah.
And then like you could find it, but it was in the choppiest 144.
Yeah,
and you're like,
yep.
all right, well, I'm definitely going to download this song because this is right around when LimeWire shit the bed.
Or the fact that like, I mean, you ever think about the fact that like you're older than YouTube? Like that's kind of weird to think about. Like,
no, so that doesn't weird me out. What weirds me out is
older than Google too.
Yeah, that's the thing that gets me is that I'm older than Google.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah,
because it's like I don't remember it not being there, but it was not there for a point.
Okay, you know what's really funny? I didn't have dial-up connection, but I knew about dial-up connection since I was very, very young. So when people who are older than us are like, you don't remember dial-up, and I'm like,
I do.
Yes, I do. I didn't have it, but I fucking remember it.
I think I did have it for a very brief period, but I don't remember, to be honest. I don't remember 100%.
Dude, I remember when cable first became like a big thing.
Yeah.
And you got the black box that sat on top of your TV. You remember the black box?
That I don't remember, no.
Okay. Maybe it's because I was poor. You got a black box and you had a black remote that probably about 10 inches long and about an inch and a half thick and about 4 inches wide. And all the buttons were these tiny little fucking rectangles. And my grandfather was blind as a fucking bat, so he couldn't see any of the buttons. Nice. All you knew is that the power button was the tiny little red button at the top corner.
Yeah. Oh,
dude, someone was like, back in my day, we had MTV. I'm like, we had MTV in my day.
Yeah. Wait, what the fuck?
Yeah,
that's not a good one to use.
I was so confused. I'm like, bruh, nothing was better.
You gotta hit me with that older school shit. Like back in my day, the TV was black and white. Then I'll be like, all right, you win.
Yeah. Well, so fun fact, my cousin actually had a black and white dial tone TV. You actually had to turn the dial to change the channel.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Like a radio.
Yeah, it's nuts, isn't it?
Anyway, this is a dumb tangent. I don't know why we just went down that rabbit hole, but goodbye, everyone.
Peace, motherfucker.